as we were in a 10-year collective agreement, we saw the cost of living go up. We saw us go through COVID, and we saw the countless erosions of some of the things that we took for granted in the industry: shorter duty periods, less flights per day, not as many pairings per se. So that's the arrangement of flights that, had multiple up and downs. And then, of course, the wage coming down, like at Air Canada from 2000 to 2025, the entry wage has gone up $3 in 25 years. $3.
Welcome to Activists Make History. My name is Peggy Nash. I've been a union activist, a feminist advocate, and for nearly a decade, a member of Parliament in Canada's House of Commons. I know what it's like to start from scratch, against the odds, in building a community campaign or running for political office. Our lives are hugely affected by political decisions, but for the underrepresented in political life, Canadian politics can seem like a secret society designed to shut them out. I'm here with a special series from Perspectives, a Canadian journal of political economy and social democracy, to lift the curtain on these electoral mysteries and show the underdogs how we can do it. In Activists Make History, I talk to activists, experts, political leaders, and those like me who've been there and done that, to show you can make real progressive change in how Canadian democracy functions so that we can win a better world through elected office. My guest today is Wesley Lesosky, a steadfast union leader and president of CUPE's Air Canada component. Leading the fight for flight attendants' rights, Wesley has been at the helm of the flight attendant strike in August 2025 that brought national attention to the struggle for fair pay in the airline industry. Under his leadership, thousands of flight attendants stood strong together, showing the power of solidarity in the face of corporate conniving. Wesley's work is a reminder that when workers organize and take bold action, they can shift the balance of power and win real change. We recorded this episode on September the 11th, less than 1 month after Air Canada flight attendants began their August 2025 strike. An outstanding wage issue is now headed to arbitration. So Wesley Lesosky, thank you so much for being on our podcast, Activists Make History. And you've been a bit busy lately. How are you doing?
Good. I'm currently on 2 days of vacation, so it's a nice little break after everything, but the ball keeps rolling, as we know, so yeah.
Yeah. Flight attendants, collective agreements, their schedules, their working conditions are incredibly complicated. And what struck me in your recent dispute with Air Canada was how you distilled the issues to really give the public a focus on the unpaid work, and how clearly that came through the media, which is no small feat. Can you tell us a bit about how you organized, how you began building support for this issue, and how you really managed to punch through in the public debate?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent question. So we started this campaign, Unpaid Work Won't Fly, probably 2.5 years, just shy of 3 years ago. And it was an airline division initiative within CUPE. So it was for all of the unionized airlines, I guess, in Canada. So I'm the president of the airline division as well. So we started that out by lobbying government, lobbying the general public, of course, lobbying our members to build solidarity on this issue and to kind of highlight what we found was an average of 35 hours a month that goes unpaid. It was not easy, for sure, to just be heard. But towards the end, as I'm sure you may be aware, we had 2 bills introduced, one by the NDP, one by the Conservatives, but then neither of them ended up being heard. And that kind of brought us to the bargaining stage with Air Canada. So it was Air Canada's first airline went to bargaining since the campaign kicked off. WestJet will be the next, which I believe will be in the next month or so when they commence their bargaining process. And yeah, it's just been an educational bit the whole way through on getting people to understand, how we're paid, when we're paid, and those critical duties that we're not paid for that are actually the mandatory duties that are required by Transport Canada. So
let me just back up a bit on that, because the first thing before you get to government and get to the public, as you said, is building support with your own members. And as I understand it, it used to be that flight attendants were paid an especially high hourly rate, which in essence compensated for the unpaid work. Because people say, well, why has this been going on for so long? This is ridiculous. Why wasn't it fixed? But it's my understanding that flight attendants had a wage that in essence allowed for them to feel like this work was in fact paid for. Is that correct? And if so, what changed?
I want to say there's a varying look on that. So that's called formula pay, or that's what the employer liked to call formula pay. So they would claim, or said, and I guess at some point was the understanding of the unions too, that your hourly rate compensated you for the unhoured portion. So that's why, as you mentioned, it was inflated. But I think it was highlighted as we kind of entered into a 10-year, or as we were in a 10-year collective agreement. We saw the cost of living go up. We saw us go through COVID, and we saw the countless erosions of some of the things that we took for granted in the industry: shorter duty periods, less flights per day, not as many pairings per se. So that's the arrangement of flights that, had multiple up and downs. And then, of course, the wage coming down, like at Air Canada from 2000 to 2025, the entry wage has gone up $3 in 25 years. $3. So it just hasn't kept up with that ratio that everybody talks of. So yeah, I think with that being said, and kind of coming to the end, minimum wage in Canada skyrocketing, the federal minimum wage skyrocketing for the last 10 years, all of those were good arguments and justification as to why this formula per se doesn't work anymore.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I understand that, and especially being in a 10-year collective agreement, my God, I mean, that's another history. I won't get into that now, but that's a heck of a long time, and so much changes, not just the cost of living, but working conditions change, lots of things change. So my guess is there must have been a lot of pent-up frustration amongst your members. But they don't organize themselves. It takes a concerted effort. It takes leadership. It takes a plan and successful execution of that plan to help your members be focused on just one key issue. And maybe I'm sure there were more issues, but that one key issue punched through. Just tell us a bit about how that was achieved, because that is very difficult, even when people are as angry as the Air Canada flight attendants seem to be.
That's a long story in itself. So when I came into my role as the component president for Air Canada, that commenced in 2019. And one thing that I felt personally was lacking, one of the reasons I ran, was there was a component union, then your local union, and then you as the member. And the only time you really heard from your component union was with a bulletin talking of anything that was more so policy issue, or let's say a discussion you had with the company. So right off the bat, I came in and initiated 24-hour access for our members for emergency situations. I personally reply to each and every email I get throughout the day, including on vacation days, including on weekends.
Customer service.
Yeah, but I felt it was very important that each and every flight attendant had an outlet to go to, whether it was a positive communication, negative communication, or whatever. And at the beginning, it was not the most positive, I'll be honest. There was quite a hurdle to come up. But I find even today, post-strike, post everything, it's positive. So I think enacting that in 2019 to then when we started in 2022, 2023, moving forward with unpaid work, we already had the membership engaged. We had the membership trusting. We had built so much solidarity in just being open, communicating, everybody kind of working towards the same goal. And I think bargaining was always, the next step that we were going to. So we continually built that up. So I think that's kind of how it happened, is we kind of opened that floodgate beforehand so that when we had this particular issue, such as unpaid work, go out, people were trusting the process. When we said reach out to your MPs, they did reach out. When we said, hey, join us on the Hill, they did. So all that kind of stuff worked because of how we led them to that, right? I feel.
That's interesting. So you had a very long lead time. This didn't just happen overnight. Although Canadians might have just heard about this, quote unquote, overnight. And it's no small feat with flight attendants because they are scattered in bases all over the country. Many of them are out of the country if their work takes them there, and they work all kinds of different crazy schedules. I mean, that is incredibly difficult to reach people and to just to get them to find common ground. And I guess technology has helped a lot, being able to do some things online, meet online, but you're also talking about in-person meetings. How frequent were in-person meetings? And also, did you actually do education classes? Were there workshops, or it was all action-oriented with no kind of classroom or online education?
I wouldn't say we needed to do any education on this front. We believe, obviously, as a union in education on certain things, but when it came to the unpaid work piece, there just wasn't much education we had to give to them to kind of understand what was going on. But we did pick up on things such as Zoom. So we would have like Zoom meetings with people. We also had our regular general membership meetings through our locals, but Zoom was a place, or is a place currently, that I utilize too, where I can talk directly to the masses. And we've seen thousands, literally, of people join our Zoom calls, which is absolutely amazing. We've never had 1,000 members show up across Canada to in-person meetings. So we've really found ways to communicate that way and to talk, listen, and engage with the membership. So yeah, I think that's made a huge difference.
I mean, Zoom has really revolutionized things. I mean, whether you're in Rome or Sao Paulo or Vancouver, you can be in an immediate conversation. It really is quite amazing. Now, clearly, you were able to help your members focus on this issue. That 99% strike vote was, I'd never heard of a strike vote like that.
Sure.
That was pretty incredible, especially for that number of people. Were you surprised by the strike vote? And were you surprised when the members turned down the tentative agreement? Because it was turned down by just about the same amount.
Yeah, no, I wasn't surprised on either front. So I was thrilled and incredibly happy with the turnout of our strike vote. And I was so hopeful that the company would see that, engage with that, and we wouldn't have had to go on strike. But as we know, it went the opposite way. And I think the turndown of the tentative agreement, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding on that. So we had a tentative agreement. Yeah, we had a tentative agreement that had kind of all the working conditions that were locked in. Our membership was voting solely on wage. And so that wage portion, I don't think there was one member that saw it as a negative to turn it down, because all the members feel that, okay, this is going to be the minimum. So I kind of saw that those two were going to be the way that they were.
Mm-hmm. Some people who are not familiar with collective bargaining might not understand, first of all, the importance of a strike vote, that a strike vote is really about the membership showing support for the bargaining committee on the key issues that the bargaining committee is going after. So it must have really been a boost to get that 99% strike vote. And if Air Canada had been reading the room properly, you'd think they would have come to the table and said, okay, this is a hot issue. We're going to have to deal with this. And instead and Mike Russo, the CEO, said publicly he expected the government to intervene, which they did. And famously, CUPE defied that intervention. Were you shocked when the company fell back on that provision and that the government complied?
Shocked that the government complied, no. Shocked with the company, I want to say somewhat yes. I think about this daily. I can't understand the logic of why they would state that, even if they were doing it, one. But two, why they didn't come to the table and just bargain. We had I felt, very good relationship prior to on working with the company. And I think that's incredibly important in labor relations. And that's another thing, I personally attempted to and successfully built up with the company along with my executive. So it's very damaging, obviously, and disappointing, but also surprising, because I truly felt, and I think I've said it the whole way through, that they really were going to come to the table at the end. I thought something was going to be solidified. I had every reason to believe that, okay, they understand the process and we get it, Wesley, and we're going to come to the table, and, we just have to follow timelines too, blah, blah, blah. But obviously what they were saying is we're going to follow every timeline, including a section 107. And you know what I mean? So it's extremely disappointing. Extremely disappointing, I think is the word.
And surprising, I think, because if you're running a company and you know that almost every single person in that company is dissatisfied on one key issue, and rather than address that issue, you decide to just come down on them with a hammer, that surely, for a customer service organization, doesn't make much sense. So that really surprised me that they could not figure out that for their most important workforce, public-facing workforce, that they needed to figure this out so that people weren't going back to work angry and frustrated. So that kind of shocked me.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the anger and frustration is more alive today than it was yesterday and is only growing. So it is one thing that I can't understand as to why a company would do this to their own brand, right?
And they owe a lot of money now. There were a lot of, I think, unnecessarily inconvenienced passengers. People missed weddings and funerals and things, cruises. And I was just reading that there is a potential additional liability besides what they have already compensated people. So surely it's more costly to them than if they had just come to the table beforehand. But I'm also interested in the strategy of nailing down the collective agreement, refusing to go to arbitration on the unpaid work, because knowing that an arbitrator would not rule in your favor, because when you go to arbitration, an arbitrator is not going to blaze a new trail. They're not going to change existing labor relations and try something new. But on the wages, you were able to carve that out, which is exactly what an arbitrator can deal with. And as you said, they were not going to reduce the wages that have been bargained, and so the members can only gain. How did you develop that strategy?
I was in talks with William Kaplan, the mediator arbitrator, was there with us. So he was working obviously as a mediator at that point between the company and the union. And we kind of went back and forth on the key issues that we needed to deal with. So that was wages, the unpaid work. There were some other things with regards to work allowances and stuff like that were worked through. But they obviously wanted us to agree to the wages, but we just couldn't agree to the wages. The wages are nowhere near what we think we require. It still keeps some members kind of below, certain lines that they should be above. And so we just wouldn't agree to that. So that was one of the things that kind of came back in discussions on moving forward on our side, on seeing if we could kind of nail something like that down. And that was something that we got in the end to get it out, and also give our members a voice through the process on something to vote on, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found it very interesting. It's not that often that wages are divided out like that, going to arbitration, and I thought it was a very effective strategy. Mm-hmm. And you had the backing of your members. It's flight attendants are not necessarily known for being militant trade unionists, and the fact that they were willing to defy not just their employer but the federal government shows how determined people were to make this change. And everything I saw had your members solidly behind you and your bargaining team in this round of negotiations.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I've never seen anything like it. The solidarity, the professionalism, the tact, how people moved forward, and how they were behind us, and how they were willing to reach out, ask questions, get involved, signing up for picket duty, like all that stuff that I personally have seen as a struggle in the past was very easy with this group. And we had excellent mobilization committees, strike captains, like everybody stepped up to do their part. And if they couldn't, they reached out to apologize, or almost like they were talking to us like an employer. Do I need a note? Is it okay if I can't? Like, no, that was the type of solidarity, but care. And everybody wanted to be there for one another right up until the end. And I thought that was, it was amazing. I've never seen anything like it or felt anything like that before.
Yeah, it's pretty unique. I mean, a lot of members support their bargaining committee, but that amount of cohesion and determination doesn't happen every day. Now, the members did turn down the agreement. You said that was exactly what you expected. And the flight attendants aren't alone in that. There's been a number of collective agreements, tentative agreements that have been turned down because possibly the union, but especially the employer, underestimated where things needed to get to and how pressured people were economically. And so here you're saying that you were not happy with the wage offer. You expected it to be turned down. How are members feeling today? And I guess my question is, are they still angry? And if so, who are they angry at? Are they angry at the employer? Are they angry at the government? Are they angry at you?
Excellent question. So once we came back from the strike, of course, you can't communicate immediately what's going on. So there was a large sense of happiness when the strike was over, because I believe the members thought, oh, we got 100% of everything. I think that's typically where membership goes, right? And because they don't have a full picture of what's there. As the information rolled out, then the questions come in, then the road shows start, then you get into your vote. And I think through that process, there was a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, and it was geared towards everywhere. I think a lot of it came to the union for they didn't fully understand the process that we went through, or why they weren't able to vote, or what exactly did the Section 107 do here. So there was also that educational piece that we did. And so we kind of ticked that box, moved forward, finalized the vote. Now that the vote's done, the company's right out there sending out the implementation. Here's what's going on. And now we're mediation and arbitration, where typically the two sides do that together. So I think that has created a lot of confusion into just kind of the whole process with the members. The membership is very, I'd say, angry and disappointed in the employer. There's been a lot of performance meetings that have been happening. So a lot of that kind of stuff that's happened post this. So I think there's so many different venues that it's hard to answer that question. Sorry, I'm going all over. Hard to answer that question because there's so many different elements. But with regards to the wage specific piece, 50% of our members are kind of on that bottom section, and they saw it as, I still won't be able to pay full rent and eat that month. So that disappointment is obviously stemmed to the employer because the union doesn't pay them. But there's also that very small group that feels, well, I'm disappointed in the union for not pushing harder. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the challenge that we deal with, right?
I have some experience in collective bargaining, and I know that when you put bargaining proposals together, sometimes the members feel, well, that's what we're going to get, and anything less than what we're calling for is a concession. And it's hard to explain to people that you're bargaining with the employer. You're not bargaining with yourselves. If you could all agree this is what you need, but you have to convince the employer, and they also have their perspective and their demands. And so you're meeting, hopefully in the middle or in some place that addresses your concerns. But without having gone through that process, for a lot of people, it's hard to understand that. And this is especially complicated because of the mediation and arbitration process. When do you expect a decision to come out of the arbitration? Is there any timetable on that?
An arbitrator hasn't even been selected yet. So that process we initiated on Monday or Tuesday morning. I reached out to Air Canada to commence that process and obviously lead them to the path of our legal, and then they'll have some discussions, hopefully sooner than later, on the process of selection arbitrator, and then hopefully we'll move forward with that. We're obviously wanting something expedited. It'd be very nice to close this chapter and move forward. So that's kind of the hope, that there's no news as of today on that.
And what happens in the meantime? Is it a case of, until the wages are finalized, you don't have a new collective agreement and the previous conditions stand, or are some parts of this going to be implemented now?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm personally finding challenging. So the implementation process has commenced based on Air Canada asserting that once the ratification vote was done, it'll commence from there. But the commencement of some things will take 90 to 120 days. Some of those issues are pay issues, and I am trying to understand how it's going to take that long to implement when other things were able to be implemented August 19th. So there's that hiccup, I'll call it, that we're going to work through now. But the collective agreement, other than the wage portion, is in full effect as of September 6th. So all the conditions are now in there, enshrined in there, but now it's just an implementation phase on IT programming or crew scheduling, understanding, that kind of stuff.
I see. And I mean, I suppose on wages and other monetary issues, there would be retroactivity in any case. It's just frustrating to have to wait for some of these things.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the frustration on them, and I can understand with the wage piece. I get the wage piece, but when it comes to like showing up for work, and currently we're not credited for that. We just secured that in bargaining, but that's going to take 90 days to implement. Those are the things that make me wonder why. Why is that going to take so long? Pay protection for our Rouge members, we secured that. That's going to take until January. So I look at that kind of stuff, and I, just being honest, don't understand why it would take that long for an issue that at the table the employer said, well, this isn't a big deal. It doesn't happen that often. Okay, let's implement it then. Let's move forward, right? So, yeah.
Do you get the sense they're trying to punish you?
I definitely feel that on the labor front, for sure. They definitely aren't necessarily engaged in meeting to discuss. They prefer to do things by writing, which is I'm more than comfortable with if that's the avenue they wish to go. It's unfortunate, though, because we built up a good foundation for labor relations that I hadn't seen previously at Air Canada when I came in. My team at the component level, my vice president, secretary, treasurer, and I had weekly calls with the company just to go over anything that might be lingering. The company has chosen to cease all of that going forward. So that's, I would say that's a good word. It is a form of punishment for sure.
I have one other follow-up question to that, but first I want to go back, because what struck me in seeing you in the media in these negotiations, and I had never met you before, I hadn't heard of you before, and then I saw this very passionate but confident leader who clearly had the backing of his members in this hot button dispute. And I have been in situations like that, and it's a real high pressure situation. How did you get there? Back up and just tell us a bit about your history and how you developed as a trade unionist.
Well, I was a young gay individual when I came into the union, and Denise Callahan was the local president of CAW Local 3000. So retail kind of sector. I was working for Kentucky Fried Chicken, and
I know there's a master bargaining agreement at Kentucky Fried Chicken, and Denise has been the architect of that.
Yeah, and it was really cool. I saw her, I don't remember what the issue was, but I saw her as quite forceful, quite determined. I mean, that was long before computers. We used to get mailed letters coming in, so I guess just pre-2000. But she approached me and said, hey, did you want to get involved in the union? Take a look what it's like. Come in. Kentucky Fried Chicken has some language where you can come in and see it. So from there, I did some courses in Port Elgin with the CAW, and then I worked on the bargaining committee with Kentucky Fried Chicken. I also worked on grievance handling with Starbucks, White Spot, you know, the first McDonald's, hotels with CAW, all that kind of stuff within the local, and worked with absolutely amazing people. And I was also a steward with UFCW 1518 when I worked at Safeway, which I was kind of doing all this at the same time. But
you're a gig worker.
Yeah, but CAW was my absolute pride. And I say that always. And I was so happy when Denise reached out through this process that I was going through, because she was really the one that I was seeing the whole way through and have over 20 years. Because I often thought, like, I wonder if I'm like kind of the same as her. I wonder if I'm moving it the same way as she moved me, because she really embraced me in a direct way. And it was really profound on where I am today. So all of this is very ironic and very warming to have happened. But so I started in that. And then through Safeway, I left and went into the aviation with Canada 3000. We organized with CUPE, and then that went down. So I then got on with Air Canada through Air Canada Zip. And so I was the first union representative for Air Canada Zip until that kind of blended into Air Canada. And then I took some years off and then went into the trustee role to kind of learn what that was about on the national level, component level. And then moved into secretary treasurer of component, and then into president third term now. So it was kind of I started kind of as youth and that kind of stuff at the very, very beginning, and then moved up to president where I am now, kind of skipped over the local step in our structure. But people really embraced me for always being available. I did a lot of committee work, but I was always available. And as I'm sure you're aware, when you're looking over 10,500 people and everybody feels that their individual issue is an emergency, it can be a lot of work on when people reach out, how they reach out, how it's perceived. But I think we've done an absolutely amazing job, and that I'm incredibly proud of. So, yeah.
Well, I agree that you've done an amazing job, and it sounds like an organizer, Denise Callahan, tapped you and you incorporated that lesson because you clearly have invested a huge amount of time and energy in organizing the organized members of your own union and building them and helping them develop the confidence and the desire to really work together and make a difference through the union. That doesn't happen by accident. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So what now? This is the other question I wanted to ask you. What I know what now you're trying to get the arbitrator assigned, and then you'll go through the arbitration process. You're trying to get Air Canada to get over itself and implement this new agreement. How do you see that relationship developing, and what's in the future for you, Wesley?
Lots of great questions there. So I'm hopeful Air Canada will warm up and come around, but we're willing to wait that out. I think that's kind of on the back burner for us as well. I think that the number one priority for me going forward is to ensure that we maintain kind of that engagement with the membership and just answer all those questions to ensure everybody's back on that right side. With regards to unpaid work, we have our first rally actually on the 16th on the Hill. We will keep pressing that. I will continue to push that fight. It's not something that we should have to bargain. This is something that should be a minimum standard. Every hour work should be paid, period. So that'll be a big thing. Until that's over, I will continue to fight that. And then my term ends beginning of 2027. So I actually plan on going back to fly until my retirement of July 2027. So I will do that. I still want my last flight. I bargained this collective agreement, always saying I want to work under the conditions that were bargained. So I'm going to stand true to that right up till the end, and then disappear into the sunset.
Wow. I mean, you've come such a long way and achieved a tremendous amount, and you deserve whatever you want to do in terms of working under this new collective agreement and whatever else you aspire to. What routes do you like to fly?
It's been a while, but my last route, my last flight actually was Shanghai, and I loved it. But I'm a Vancouver-based flight attendant, so I mean, there's so many new routes that have come in since I've been off in 2017 is when I started in the union full time. So I mean, I'm good with a Las Vegas, a Dubai, Australia. I really embraced the job. I absolutely loved what I did. I truly embraced it. So that's the camaraderie and just being with people. It's so hard when you go into the union and you're separated from that lifestyle that we have that is truly amazing. It's a challenge to kind of be away from the people element of it.
It's very unique. Anybody who works shifts like that or special hours, you develop that bond with your co-workers. I think other, firefighters and nurses can probably identify with that. And I can see how you would make how you have made a great flight attendant. So people have been very concerned about their travel plans. I am assuming now you can reassure people. Fly Air Canada, don't worry about job disruptions, and hopefully Air Canada will be a little better prepared to negotiate directly in the future. I think you've achieved that much.
I'm hopeful, yes, totally safe and great to fly Air Canada. The great customer service are those flight attendants, and we're prepared for you for sure. And I do truly hope that in the 3 years to come, when we enter into this process again, with Air Canada, that they realize that the union's serious about its demands, the membership is behind, and they're willing to take any route they require to get a deal. I think that's very important, and this could have been the best PR outcome for the employer, but it unfortunately turned into the worst PR outcome for the employer. But it was a choose an adventure, and they chose their path, right? Unfortunately.
Well, I think it's ended up well for your members. And my final question is, how can people listening to this podcast get in touch with you at CUPE? And for people who want to take part in the rally on Parliament, how can people join the rally if they want to join the fight to eliminate unpaid work?
Yeah, so we have a website. It's unpaidworkwon'tfly.ca. That'll have the rally information, but even if this goes out post-rally, still relevant information. It'll have all the information lined out on future organizing events or what's happening with it, where we've come, press release, that kind of stuff. If people want to reach out to me or get a hold of me, my contact info is on our website, which is accomponent.ca. And there's a contact us, and you can go there. And I have members of the public reach out all the time. And it's quite nice to see the different perspectives or the different things that people gravitated towards, especially through the bargaining process. Always something I hold dear to learn from and or pass on to, so people are well aware of kind of what could be perceived what way going forward. So it's always welcome.
Thanks so much, Wesley Lesosky. You are a role model and an inspiration. Thank you for your leadership and for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
That was Wesley Lesosky, president of CUPE's Air Canada component. Thanks for listening. Activists Make History is a special podcast series from Perspectives, a Canadian journal of political economy and social democracy, a publication and production of the Broadbent Institute. This show could not have been made possible without the generous contribution of Unifor, Canada's largest private sector union. If you'd like to hear more from Activists Make History, share and subscribe to Perspectives Journal on all major podcast platforms, as well as Press Progress's Sources podcast that digs deeper into the news stories you won't find in the major papers. The Perspectives Journal podcast and Sources are proud members of the Harbinger Media Network, Canada's progressive podcast community. Once again, I'm Peggy Nash, your host for Activists Make History and proud member of the Broadbent Institute's Board of Directors. You can read my latest book, Women Winning Office, an activist guide to getting elected, from Between the Lines Books.